Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, July 5th, 2023 council meeting for Strathmore at 6 p.m. We are beginning the meeting. And at this time, I would like to do our monthly land acknowledgement. It's something that we very much believe in here in the town of Strathmore. We honor all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. We acknowledge that the ancestral and traditional lands on which we gather are land of the Blackfoot Confederacy and Treaty 7 territory, a traditional meeting ground for many Indigenous peoples, and in particular, our neighbors, Siksika Nation, on whose traditional territory we work, live, and play, and on whose traditional territory we stand and where Strathmore resides. Council, at this time, I'd like to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items that are not on the agenda that you would like to put on the agenda? Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I'm wondering if I can add something under our in-camera portion on Wheatland Housing Management Body, FOIP Section 24.
Okay. Any other councillors tonight? Anything from administration?
Nothing from administration, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no public hearing tonight. And public comments, Jonathan, just so that I am aware, when we do the public comments, do I read this each time? The statement? Sorry, confirmation of agenda. I'm looking for a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that Council adopt the July 5th, 2023 regular Council meeting agenda as amended.
Thank you for the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. My question to Jonathan, each month am I reading out this statement regarding public comments?
Thank you, Your Worship.
And I don't mind.
That blurb is in the agenda packet, so
Okay.
I don't think there's any need to read it out every time.
And do we have any public comments tonight?
No registered comments, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to delegations. We have a delegation from the Wheatland Society of Arts. And I believe, Brandy, you are speaking to this. If you wouldn't mind, most of us know you, but if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for the people at home, and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, staff. Thank you for this opportunity for us to be here. We're not here to ask for anything for once. We're just here to give you a fun little update because you've been so generous to us. With me is Janet Kirka and Elaine McKinnon, also diehard volunteers with Wheatland Society of Arts. Their hours contributed are uncountable, like a lot of us. I just wanted to say, I don't even remember who put the notion in our head it's always been a focus for us to let people know why we can do what we do and how we can offer such a vast array of opportunities for virtually everybody. And a lot of that is through funding from yourselves, from the town, through county funding and casino money, and then other fundraisers and various things that we put on, other smaller grants and things like that. And the president can't be here tonight, but I saw she had submitted a letter of support along with dozens and dozens of users of the facility, instructors, volunteers, like just those people are just actually a small sampling of the throughput through that art studio and our out of studio programs. Although I'm astounded by how many letters came in, I was kind of surprised how many people couldn't take the time to thank all the people that make this possible. Not necessarily ourselves, but like yourselves and the county and United Way grants and all that the volunteers that make it happen. But anyways, it was still refreshing to see the stack of letters we did get. Those people are so important, and I'm grateful to every single one of them for taking the time to make a note to thank people. But what I was going to point out is, as the president said in her letter, we talk to people every day, and they're just floored by what we actually offer. And I'm so busy doing the doing that I kind of lose track of what we're actually doing. I'm just worried about doing the next thing, and that's the case with some of us. And then when people are like, I just can't believe all this stuff you do, and you have this low-cost stuff, and you have stuff for disabled people and seniors and youth, and you have all levels, like some of it's free and some of it's very high-end expensive, and there's just the full range. That is possible because of people like you and the county, and it's kind of humbling when we think of what we can do because of you guys. And so, yeah, we provided some of those letters for you to just have a look through. The kids are the funnest because we try to explain to them how this is possible. Like the town and the county, they give us this money and, could you write a little note to thank them? They put their heads right down and they start writing or drawing a picture or whatever. The cutest one is this one kid. He's like, I love art, please send money. He kind of missed the point, but he was very grateful nonetheless. And lots of the kids, they just drew you a picture, but lots of the adults took the time to thank you. And so the pamphlet, the brochure, we put 4 of those out a year, 3 of them actually, and that's a pretty good sampling of everything we do, but we have to get the brochures together months in advance. So of course, there's actually a lot of stuff that goes on that isn't even in there, namely the out-of-studio stuff and private events and birthday parties, and there's a lot of that kind of events that go on also. And so we just provided that to give you a bit of an insight of what we do. So aside from that, we just, instead of droning on and on about numbers and participation, and which we generally do at our annual thing, we just put together a little video for us. We all kind of contributed pictures and information to it, but Deb Clicks actually put it together for us. She's another one of our volunteers, and she did a really nice job of a nice little video for you. And we can just play that. It's like 4 minutes long. And then if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. So if we could just play that video now. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer. We actually have like thousands and thousands of pictures. Lots of them show faces and such, so we take those out. But yeah, we have thousands of just the little art projects and stuff too. But anyway.
Well, thank you for your presentation, Brandy, and it's really exciting to see so many people of all different ages caught up in all sorts of aspects of art. Councillor Wiley, and then Councillor Peterson.
Yeah, outstanding. I just love what your group does for the community. And I guess there's even going to be a partnership coming up with Holy Cross Collegiate in the fall. So we're really looking forward to that. How much money a year after the sponsorships come in are you guys left making up in fundraising? Do you have even a ballpark?
I would say not too much fundraising because we actually do make some fees. So some combination of the fees that we do, because some of the classes we do charge like good strong fees, like for the higher end, and they actually offset a little bit also the ones that aren't making any money, that are actually losing money for us or whatever. So far between the money that the town gives us and the money that the county gives us and the casino money that we earn, those are the three big ones. And then there's smaller grants here and there. So far, we're actually managing that way. We have tried like the usual gala thing or whatever, where you do that kind of fundraiser with a supper and auctions and all that, and that was a little bit of a fail. But that might take a few years to get your stride on that kind of a thing. But that actually was backwards for us when we did that. And then we do get lots of donations of supplies and things like that also, so that helps. But so far, we've been able to get by between the funding and the fees and the casino money and such like that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Peterson.
I'm always amazed at the, probably now, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. You're probably over 1,000 people that come through there every year now. Like it just is astounding at between what is on site and off site. And having Holy Cross come in is going to be a big boon. And I really hope the other schools follow. They're sure talking about it. And so it's really good to see a school step up and do that. And then see other schools trying to think about how they can manifest the same thing. It's pretty impressive. And the undertaking of the pottery studio on the other side, it's a big undertaking, and it's impressive to see how many people have pitched in, including, the society themselves, to create a safety net under that, to build it, and always that mindfulness that I see this group bringing to community around making their way, and then what the Wheatland Society of the Arts have been able to contribute to the vault, and to our downtown art scene is also a huge contributor to the overall beauty of community. And Prospect Services, a year ago, when I was in their offices and they were planning the initial murals that they were doing in the town, they talked about how the community-based arts program through Wheatland Society of the Arts and the adaptive art programming had at WSA had lent itself to the programs that they were doing that are now spreading throughout the community. And it is really lending itself to a sweetening of our entire downtown particularly. And I'm so grateful to the hundreds and thousands of hours that are put there through your volunteers. I just want to say that it was a privilege for me as a ally of Wheatland Society of the Arts to nominate Brandy Hebbs for the Alberta Blue Cross Award, and it's a small award, but as usual, I know that anything that comes her way, she'll just donate it back to the society. So there's always that, and I think the proof is always in not what you say, but what you do, and what you do is extraordinary. And when I look inside that space, and I see that almost a good proportion of all the equipment that came in when you started this pottery studio was donated. you know, it speaks to people's faith in your group. And you're just all to be really congratulated and held up as examples in your community because, you know, the joy that you've brought to people, and particularly to people who would not otherwise have that opportunity. Seniors sing your praises, parents of children with special needs, parents who could not otherwise afford art programs, and then you've done the creative thing by making sure that it can sustain itself on the other side. So just thank you. It's amazing work you've done.
It's always nice to hear that it's working. We do like really try to do collaborations like Prospect Now and with the library and schools if we can and stuff like that. But I don't think we have any real tools to measure the ripple effects. So it's always nice to get outside input and realize that we are making a difference. And I believe we are, but I have no way to quantify it sometimes other than throughput, you know, attendance records and stuff like that. But
I think the next team building workshop that council does, we should do it there.
we've had the town events there, a few of them, like when Megan left and she had a little event there, and we've had a few that she's pulled over there.
Yeah, thank you.
Always grateful.
Thanks, Councillor Peterson. Any other comments from councillors? Thank you once again for your presentation, Brandy, and for all you and your group are doing in our area, in the town and the county.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That brings us to item 5.2, RCMP Q4 Quarterly Report and 23-2024 Policing Priorities. Good evening, Staff Sergeant. How are you?
Very well, Your Worship. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to appear before you to provide you, I guess, a year-end update on how we did last year with our policing priorities and have an opportunity to present a recommendation for priorities going into our next fiscal year that we'll be focusing on, and the ability to ask any questions or to provide any clarity that council may want with respect to our policing activities in Strathmore. Starting off with our Q4 report. Again, focusing on our three priorities that we carried through the last fiscal year. The first being the reduction of property crimes, targeting the reduction of theft of vehicles, theft from motor vehicles, and break-and-enters. We continue to see positive results for our habitual offender management program. During the Q4, we were monitoring 14 habitual offenders in the Strathmore and surrounding rural areas. 74 documented checks were conducted with those offenders. 6 of them are in Strathmore. Of those 6, 4 of them were found in compliance with their conditions, which is something that we like to see. One person we found in non-compliance. We laid charges and that person moved out of our area, so we're temporarily no longer monitoring that person. And one person was identified as a habitual offender that's quite prevalently involved in catalytic converter theft. Some of their crimes are fairly brazen, such as at one of our dealerships, while during business hours, we're cutting off catalytic converters off of a brand new pickup truck. And the staff happened to notice, and our members were able to catch them there, but we still grapple with this particular person frequenting our area. In any event, we had information that this person was released back into our area, and within 2 days they were in custody on new charges and back in front of the courts, and subsequently later released at another address in Calgary. So we still keep our eye out for that person who's persistently in our area and causing grief for our residents, especially when they find that their catalytic converters have been stolen. Otherwise, we do find that we're getting a lot of our success in our property crime reductions by focusing in a targeted way with those who are committing those crimes in our area. Sometimes it's difficult because most of our property crimes are committed by people who don't even live here. And I'm not just speaking about Strathmore, I'm speaking about our surrounding rural areas as well. So we have a lot of difficulty with our traveling habitual offenders in the area. We do fortunately have our Southern Alberta District crime reduction team that does help us quite a bit with putting together some of these crime series that happen around the Calgary urban area by picking out details about similarities in crimes and linking up our files. A lot of that work is done by our district analysts that really scour through what's going on in our areas and really help us really pinpoint the people that we need to be focusing on. And of course, with our cooperation and collaborative efforts with our other law enforcement agencies, we're very well aware of who's being released to our area, where they're living, and then the people we should be focusing on. So that's one area that we have been seeing some great success in, and we're going to continue with it. Our Persons of Interest program remains underway as provided to council before. Our security screw program, I got to check in with the dealerships here because I hear they ran out, so I got to go top them up again. But it's still a very successful, at least a very well participated in program where people for free can attend the dealerships in town, as well as the fire department, the detachment, and even our Langdon office for installation of a security screw that helps to prevent license plate theft. We still have a number of initiatives that are under development that we hope to get up off the ground into the next fiscal year, but one area to draw towards was Operation Cold Start. Now, Operation Cold Start was rolled out it was planned for February, but we ended up into February where our members were out checking vehicles that were idling and unattended. They would check to see if there was keys with the vehicle, whether it was locked, and whether or not there was anyone around. And as you can see, there were 61 vehicles that were found during that period of time that were unlocked, idling with keys in them. There were 57 vehicles idling while they were locked, and out of that, our members are able to make 56 owner interactions to help better educate them on protecting their property and reducing their likelihood of becoming a victim of crime. We do find that the majority of instances with vehicle theft, that there are crimes of opportunity, whether a vehicle is left unlocked, the keys are inside the vehicle, or left idling, particularly on those cold mornings. Even though Strathmore may be a ways out from a large urban center that is Calgary, we still have people that wander through our area looking for vehicles and opportunities to steal them. So it's a good opportunity to have interactions with owners. And depending on whether or not we were able to attract enough of a volunteer base, we may look at getting off the ground the Strathmore Theft Prevention Program, which essentially targets vehicles that either parked on the side of the road, just checking the door handle to make sure that they're locked. If they're not, we'll throw a pamphlet in there, lock the doors, and move on. But again, that is very, very much dependent on volunteers, which people are very busy these days. They're stretched pretty thin, and sometimes it's hard to come by. But regardless, we'll keep up our efforts in that area. I'm giving some graphics on where we fall. So the graphics that you see are charts that give us our 4-year highs and lows and where we've been landing in the quarterly results. I can tell you in Q4, we did see some increases in break and enter and theft of motor vehicles. However, we were significantly down of our 4-year averages based on our quarterly results, with the exception of theft of motor vehicles. We did see a bit of a spike in Q4 as far as that's concerned. What I can say is year end for break and enters, or for year end, as we anticipated, we did see some increases from the last fiscal year, again, coming out of COVID with a couple of years of artificially low crime rates. But as previously discussed, we take a look at where our 4-year averages are and where we're falling with our normal crime levels. Year end results, we were able to reduce break and enters by 28% from our 4-year averages. We were seeking a 5% reduction, or to maintain or seek a 5% reduction. We were able to far exceed that. Theft of motor vehicles was up slightly, but even though we saw a slight increase, we were still 33% lower than our 4-year highs, I guess, if you will. So a little higher than what we expected, but certainly not on the high end as far as what we've seen for crime in the town of Strathmore. And theft from motor vehicles was down 16% from our 4-year averages. So we did exceed the majority of our goals with respect to property crimes that we had targeted for the year. I've given you just a bit of a graphic here that demonstrates that over half of our vehicles that are stolen in the area are pickup trucks. Most of those are 1-ton, 3/4-ton pickup trucks. Those seem to be the types that are targeted, at least in our area, or at least they have been over the past year. Our traffic safety initiative, which sought to reduce injury, collisions, and overall reportable collisions from our 4-year averages by either maintaining them or by 5%. We still rolled out our regular traffic safety enforcement initiatives. Over the year, 76 drivers in both our municipal and rural areas were issued immediate roadside sanctions, which is a steep increase from years past, and that we were able to remove a significantly larger number of, I guess you could say, dangerous drivers from our roadways that were operating while impaired. As discussed prior, with our immediate roadside sanction program, it carries much of the same penalties as a criminal code investigation, but does go a little bit further. You're still losing your vehicle for a period of 15 months. During that period of time, you can enter the interlock program, which comes at a cost. There's a 30-day vehicle seizure, and of course, there's the fine that's imposed as a result, not to mention the subsequent insurance, elevated insurance charges, should that person decide to be insured again. So we are seeing a lot of impact as far as the deterrence of the immediate roadside sanction program, but our officers can typically carry out these investigations within 20 to 40 minutes roadside, beginning to end, versus a criminal code investigation. I believe I used this example in the past. Personally, the longest one I undertook just dealing with the offender was 7 hours. So just the ability to have our officers out on the roads more with this program has been very impactful. Now, it doesn't discount laying criminal code charges if there's an aggravating circumstance, like the person has had an immediate roadside sanction before, if there's, say, a child in the vehicle, if there is particularly dangerous driving habit, or if a collision occurred as a result of intoxication. Of course, we're going to be laying criminal code charges in addition to the immediate roadside sanctions. For our Check Stop program, year-end results, we were able to issue 12 immediate roadside sanctions during that period of time. There were 6 72-hour suspensions, 1 24-hour suspension, and 1 GDL, which is a new driver suspension for having alcohol on board during those check stops. We were able to document 2,178 vehicles that we checked during those check stops for the year. Our bar walk program remained in effect. Our members documented 30 bar walks for a total of 156 for the year. I do believe that number's higher, but sometimes our guys and gals get busy, and sometimes they don't write that down for me. But we do have a significant presence in our licensed establishments, and again, just to ensure that people are making safe decisions for the night. When we take a look at our collision comparisons, as I have before you, when we look at this quarter, we were down for reportable collisions by 11% compared to the same time frame last year. Our RNG collisions were down 50% from the same time frame last year, and when we look at our 4-year averages, we were far below where our 4-year averages were for quarter 4. Our year-end results, well, we did see a slight increase in year-end results from reportable collisions from the year before. We did see a reduction of 33% in our injury collisions, and then our 4-year fiscal average. We take a look at the 4-year averages. We were down by 32% with our reportable collisions and down by 6% for our injury collisions. So our objectives for the year were met with our road safety initiatives. Our third party being community engagement and Indigenous community engagement. Our members are still very active in our schools, participating in community safety and awareness programs with our youth. But there's other visits that our members participated in. The first you'll see was the blood drive for Sirens for Life, where myself and three of our co-workers were there rolling up our sleeves, donating with Canadian Blood Services. 5 of our members this year were recognized by the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Awards for service to Albertans, which was actually a fairly high percentage. I think out of, if I'm not getting the number mistaken, I think out of 67 recipients in Southern Alberta for the RCMP, 5 of those recipients were from our detachment, so I'm proud of our members. March 1st, our members attended a recruiting initiative. You'll see some photographs here. That was when the Strathmore senior girls basketball team won the provincial championships. So our members gave them the VIP escort back into town when they arrived back at the school, so they were pretty stoked about that. The video is still up on Strathmore now, so if anybody chooses to see it, they can still click on that link. During the powwow, our members were at the powwow itself. The Lead by Example powwow that happened in March. Our Indigenous policing coordinator, Sergeant Erwin McCadden, as you can see in the photograph picture to the right, was present, as well as Assistant Commissioner Trevor Daru, who was formerly our district officer, but now is, second in charge for Alberta RCMP. He caught wind of the event and he wanted to be there personally himself. Our members were there in red surge, and we participated in the grand entries. Also at the end of March, our members participated in the Battle of the Badges with the fire department. It was a hard-fought battle to win some donations to a good cause in the community. As it resulted, the trophy passed hands this year back to the police. So for our second one, we're equal as far as our wins year to year. So hopefully we can keep up that trend as far as the Mounties are concerned. But it was a fun event, and it did happen to raise just about $4,000 for a couple of charities in town. Our community liaison program remains active. We're at 17 groups in our area that are represented. And we continue with our youth programs. Our Watch Clerk program still has been providing very valuable assistance to our frontline members. We have all 3 of the positions that are part of the program are filled. The 4th position that I reallocated there is 1 temporary absence, but we are in pretty good shape, and they're providing valuable assistance to our members. So I'd like to express my thanks to the Town of Strathmore and Council for investing in this, and making a valuable investment in community safety with this program, as well as Wheatland County and Rockview County, who are also co-sponsors of the program. Our year-to-date calls for service, we saw about a 9% increase as far as calls excluding traffic occurrences to about 2,439 for the year. We saw a decrease in our traffic offenses and reports, so that that relates to whether or not the occurrence had to do with issuance of a violation ticket or just fewer complaints. I haven't made the differentiation between that, but I make that separation to make sure that we're not, inflating our overall calls for service. You can see what the breakdown is. But we did see a bit of a decrease in last year's fiscal year. That is the update for Q4 and year end. I can say that we overall met and exceeded our goals that we set out at the beginning of the year, and in particular, our community engagement remains high, which will be a continuing priority for myself and our detachment going forward to be in our community and meeting with people where they are. I guess the next point for council may be questions and perhaps the request for decision that was brought forward for priorities. So I guess if there are any answers or questions from council, I can answer them now.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant, for your report and presentation. Councillor Mitzner.
Yes, thank you very much. Recently, though, our greatest concerns and questions individually to councillors and throughout the community have been the gazebo behind here, and in addition, the homeless population that's growing. If you could just comment on those two, please.
So as far as the gazebo at Kinsman Park is concerned, it is a place that a lot of people like to use. Unfortunately, there are those who are allowed. Some may be disruptive to those around them, and especially if they're littering and leaving garbage, it's a nuisance and it is a disturbance. I am working with our municipal enforcement partners, and as far as options are concerned, to help elevate our presence in that area and to try and put in some mitigation strategies to help deter some of the behavior that's happening there. That may involve partnerships with other law enforcement agencies to increase our presence in the community, targeting not only those who are being disruptive or those who are littering or violating bylaws in the parks, but also loud noises coming from vehicles and stunting and dangerous driving within the community after hours or very late at night. I can tell you I've heard from my window, leaving it open at night while sleeping in town here, that yeah, there are some people that have some loud vehicles like screech tires and think it's like the Dukes of Hazzard around here, but they're out there. We're working on some mitigation strategies, and we're looking to try and alleviate some of the concerns that the public may have in that area. As far as our homeless population is concerned, we do have people that move through the community. We're fortunate to have an overnight shelter that's been very, very good at supporting those in our community. Unfortunately, everyone has their own personal circumstances that leads them to where they are. We do have resources available, whether it's at our local overnight shelter. We've helped transport First Nations people from the Siksika area back to their shelter to receive support. And we've also assisted some homeless to make it back to Calgary to see if they can leverage other supports there. Unfortunately, in every place that I've worked, there has been some people that are homeless and find themselves in unfortunate circumstances. There's varying reasons. It's difficult to really pinpoint for each and every person. What I can say from a policing perspective is we try to treat everyone with dignity and respect, and to try and connect them with the services that could help them in their circumstance. But ultimately, it's really up to what's available and what the person is willing to seek to pursue themselves.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. Any other comments? Councillor Peterson?
I just in light of Councillor Mitzner's question and your fulsome answer, I just am really filled with admiration and gratitude for the oversight that your detachment has provided through liaison workers and assistants over time to the shelter. And when you volunteer there and you request assistance, the response is immediate and really sensitive to needs and so appropriate. And so that has just, in terms of concerns of individuals and community, the response between the police and the shelter have mitigated so many instances to the benefit of the persons themselves, but also to the entire community. And that has been wrought by your administration, and it's been really, really good for everyone involved.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Staff Sergeant, one question as far as the break-in enters up from 22 to 29. That's just in the year prior. Are there any commonalities as far as which types of homes or what's being done as far as break-in enters? Any tips you could give to residents to minimize possible break-in enters?
So when we saw the increase of break-in enters from last fiscal year to this,
I think it's on page 21 of the big package that we have.
yeah, I'm looking at it now, Your
Okay.
Worship. So when we look at this year compared to the last fiscal year, we had an increase of 7 break-in enters total compared to the year prior. And as we expected, we were going to see some increases emerging out of the COVID era and returning more to our usual, I guess our historical crime patterns. The majority of the break-in enters that occurred were with respect to businesses. In this past fiscal year, Q1, we saw a bit of a rash in the ranch area and a couple of businesses, and it happens. We have traveling habitual offenders that move through. In that particular crime series, we had 4 break-in enters overnight committed by a person that was traveling through in a stolen vehicle on their way to Brooks, who was subsequently apprehended and we charged with a number of those offenses. We also did have a series of 3 break-in enters to a pharmacy, one specific pharmacy here in town, that we were able to identify an offender and lay charges. So we did see a bit of an uptick from last year, not only based on what we thought we would see based on our return to historical crime trends, but the majority were businesses that we were able to identify offenders with. Now, when it comes to businesses, as far as trying to protect themselves from becoming victims of crime or break-in enters, there's a lot of myriad of advice and guidance that we can provide our businesses upon request. Unfortunately, at times, some of it is provided after a crime has been committed, but a well-lit business is very helpful. Having working video surveillance in the area and ensuring that the entrances are I guess, well locked and barricaded to a point where it's very difficult to break in. Those are very helpful things for businesses to do to help harden their properties and protect themselves from break-in enters. As far as our residents are concerned, the biggest things are making sure that your home appears to be occupied at all times. Don't let your mail pile up. Know your neighbors. A lot of good calls that we have where we're able to apprehend persons in the midst of committing a break and enter or even just suspicious activity around homes are just based on people who are good neighbors. They know who their neighbors are. They know what's normal activity and what's not, and they call us. And that's a very big help for us to be able to arrive in a timely manner to either disrupt or even deter that person from committing a crime. We're open to any advice or guidance. If anybody or any resident wants to call the office, we're happy to take the time to give them some advice over the phone. And if we have time, well, we're happy to stop by and to take a look at a business or a property.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the good advice for business owners and homeowners. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. On the same kind of vein of security footage and things like that, would you recommend that businesses and homeowners register under the new rural crime capture program that the RCMP announced back mid-June, where you can, as I understand it, it's a registry of surveillance cameras and ring cameras and whatnot.
Very observant of you, Councillor Langmaid. I did in
read
fact
the news.
I did in fact have in mind a bit of a media, I guess, blitz, if you will, and to try and secure pamphlets locally that we can mail out to our ratepayers and our residents, perhaps in their utility bills, to bring awareness to the program and have them sign up. The capture program is something that I've spoken about in the past. I started the program in Chestermere, which is still rolling on their own. We were assessing the viability of starting something here specific to Strathmore and our surrounding area. Fortunately, Alberta RCMP made some investments into the program, and it's available to everyone. So I would recommend to any of our residents to sign up. As far as it's concerned, it's easy to do. It's voluntary. People can sign up. They can register. They can deregister. How it helps law enforcement is timely access to video surveillance in the area that may be of value to help solve crime in a timely manner. If we can catch somebody before they've been able to get rid of the goods that they've stolen, or if we're able to identify somebody and lay charges, then that's something that we can work with. The program, how it works in the back end, as far as our officers are concerned, they can access the program from their mobile workstations in the vehicles. It pops up like a Google map, and it'll show everyone on that map who has video surveillance that's registered with the program. We can make a phone call, and these days people can send us video footage from work from their phones. So I would highly recommend, if you're speaking with constituents, recommend that they join the program. I will be sending out some media coverage on it for how to join the program, and we'll be looking at obtaining some mail-out material to help, to send to residents in the area to build some awareness and encourage them to join the program.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, thank you again, Staff Sergeant Wilgosh. Very good report, and I feel really optimistic about how things are going, and thank you as usual for your officers and all their work in our community. And you, I mean, as a mayor, I absolutely appreciate the stability that you've brought to our detachment, and that's been a huge thing for our town. Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we could just request approval from council on the policing priorities that Staff Sergeant Wilgosh has presented here, just an endorsement in reality, please.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So we're looking for a motion then from council on page 11 of our heavy program.
And for the benefit of council, my recommendations are to continue with our current priorities, simply based on what we've been seeing with our external scanning in consultation with our area residents, and feedback from not only elected officials, but also people in our community liaison groups. Tempered with our internal scanning for what we're seeing for our crime trends, it seems to be consistent with what the bigger issues we're facing. It does not mean that we will not focus on other priorities as they emerge, but strategically focused on the biggest issues that are facing globally our area, and that's where my recommendation lies.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Staff Sergeant, in your estimation and a significant background in leadership in policing, how would you characterize Strathmore in terms of a community of safety, of being a safe community?
Strathmore is a very safe place to live. I think it's represented if you were to speak to anybody and they feel safe in their homes, they sleep well at night, and the presence of our children freely walking the streets and hanging out with their friends. I think that's evidence based on what we see from our community members. They appear to be comfortable and safe. That's the feedback I receive. And in my observation, Strathmore is a very safe community. In fact, my mission for this detachment, it's twofold, but equally important. First point, to make this detachment area the safest in the Calgary urban area. And secondly, but equally most important, is to make it the most desirable posting in the South. We want to attract the best and brightest of our organization to Strathmore. I believe this community has a lot to offer. It's been my home for over 8 years. And that's where we're going as far as our overall mission is concerned. So to answer your question, to make a short answer long, but make it short again, Councillor Peterson, Strathmore is amongst the safest communities that I've worked in.
Thank you so much. So do we have a prepared motion, Jonathan, in our package here?
I can see it.
And thank you.
Councillor
There it is.
Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had it here. Here we go. I'd like to move that council approve the 2023-2024 RCMP policing priorities for the town of Strathmore.
Thank you for the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you again for your report.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Council.
And that brings us to the consent agenda. Councillors, you have the consent agenda in front of you. You've seen it in your agenda package. Is there any item that any councillor would like to see discussed separately from the consent agenda? Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I want to address 8.4, but I don't want it brought off the consent agenda. I just wanted to ask a question of our senior leadership team, and that is if I would have permission to speak to Jonathan and Kara at another time, and it is only just regards to editorial wording. Nothing more than that. It was just if council was okay with that. It wouldn't impact what I see here. I'm very much in
I
favor
was
of
looking
it.
at taking 8.4 off for discussion.
Oh, I'm very,
All right, thank you. So we have 8.4 removed from the consent agenda. And if there's anything else, or Councillor Wiley, are you?
I'm just gearing up to read.
Perfect, I'm waiting for you.
All right, I move that council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda report by an omnibus motion. 7.1, regular council meeting minutes, June 21st. 8.3, rural renewal stream. 10.2.1, Wedemsa audited financial statements. 10.2.2, Wedemsa meeting report from June 19th. 10.2.3, Wheatland Housing Management Body meeting report, May 18th. 10.2.4, Wheatland Housing Management Body meeting report, June 15th. 10.2.5, Wheatland Housing Management Body Board meeting minutes, April 20th. I'm regretting this now. 11.1, a thank you letter from the town of Okotoks regarding Lead by Example powwow.
Thank you for that motion on the consent agenda. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to 8.1, business. 8.1, 2023 capital budget amendment, fire hall grading and surfacing, which is on page 40. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'm going to speak in front of for this item instead of the chief, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. But as you can see in the report, there's some grading issues behind the fire hall that would be that we're looking to address. This would help with the fire department in terms of the services that they provide, as well as just better improvements to that area. Working with the infrastructure department, they haven't identified any concerns with any stormwater, and this would help obviously with any major direct traffic or direct water to those storm areas. So that's the crux of my report, and so we're looking for a reallocation or an amendment to the capital budget for $20,000 to complete the grading and asphalt extension of the fire hall. If there's any questions of council, I can do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Mark, for that. Any questions from councillors? Nope.
ready with a motion, Your Worship. I just have a question relevant to the motion, and that is that, do we need to put into the motion that it is an amendment?
Sorry, through the chair, we're just requesting a budget amendment just to track these sort of things. I'm going to
So then the proposed motion that's before us is sufficient to the task?
I think so.
I would then move, Your Worship, that council approve the use of MSI grant funds in the amount of $20,000 to complete the grading and asphalt extension for the fire hall to the 2023 Road Asset Management Plan Project, ROA EN 2304.
Thank you for that. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Mark. And on behalf of myself and council, could you pass along our thanks for all the work the fire department did with the pancake breakfast Saturday morning? I was able to flip pancakes for a while with our new MLA, and they're just such a fun group of people, and they put in so much time to make that event a huge success for our people.
I will, Your Worship.
Thank you. And that brings us to recreation user fee comparison on page 43.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as I've indicated in my report here, council had earlier or previously requested some fee comparison from some, it was kind of, we left it was kind of vague in terms of what municipalities we should look at. Annually, each of the facilities try to do their best to communicate with other municipalities and other recreation facility providers, such as Repsol Sports Center or Spray Lake Sawmill in Cochrane, to try to understand on how their fees are being set, and therefore that's kind of our market comparison. So we've done our best to try to provide some comparisons, between ourselves, Okotoks, Airdrie, and some other municipalities. Obviously, it's a challenge when we're trying to compare apples and oranges and cherries, because you're going to have a facility like Genesis Place in Airdrie that offers, skating, a fitness center, a swimming pool, rec fields and things like that versus, a facility like ours that are 3 independent facilities. So it's a challenge, and so what we've done there, our best to illustrate some of the comparisons, whether it's rental fees or drop-in rates or membership and things like that. We've also identified some of the some fees associated with the Civic Center, but again, you're looking at different facilities and what they have to offer. The comparisons. We included a place like Drumheller, for example, because other municipalities may not have had that, or in different rates and things like that. So, as noted in my report too, it really just covering just the recreation facilities. It's not covering any parks or any outdoor amenities that historically haven't been charged for the town. But so, if there's any questions from council, I'll be glad to do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Mark. Questions for Mark on the comparisons or the report that's been presented to us? Councillor Wiley?
I don't have any questions for Mark, but I am ready to make a motion based on the information that was brought to us. So I just want to outline again that as a councillor, I want the recreation fees to be fair, but fair both to the user and the taxpayer. I understand that comparing fees with other municipalities is extremely challenging, which is why I'm going to be bringing forward this motion. We want to make sure that our recreation facilities are being optimized, the services that they provide. And comparing services, again, is incredibly difficult because our facilities vary from other municipalities. So I would like to make a motion that council direct administration to bring a report to the July 12th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting, so next week, regarding recreation user fee and services comparison, to discuss the scope of potentially hiring a consultant for the purpose of developing a report on the town's recreation fees and services.
Okay, thank you for that.
So I'm just moving that we discuss it at a committee of the whole meeting, not that we hire the consultant yet.
Okay, so your motion is different from the one that was in our
yeah,
email?
sorry, I talked to
Okay.
legislative services before the meeting.
Okay,
Made some changes.
okay,
Councillor Langmaid recommended we needed to know a price tag, so.
okay. So you're hoping for a report a week from tonight?
No, I'm
No.
just hoping to discuss
Okay.
this at a committee of the whole meeting next week.
Okay,
So all that jibber jabber was to say, let's talk about this again next week.
okay. And did you put that in a motion? Okay, I'm a little confused because
Jonathan and I also have emailed each other, so he's got a
Okay.
copy of the motion. Did you want me to read it again, just so?
I wouldn't mind because I was so ready for your
Okay.
other motion.
My apologies. The council direct administration to bring a report to the July 12th, I think it's the report. Is that correct, Jonathan? That's where the confusion is. It's the report we already have. Okay. The council direct administration to bring the report to the July 12th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting regarding recreation user fee and service comparison to discuss the scope of potentially hiring a consultant for the purpose of developing a report on the town's recreation fees and services.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. I'm with you now. I understand what's going on. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Mitzner?
So this is the report that's already been completed. We're just visiting
And so all
it
we're
at a
doing is
different time.
contemplating hiring a consultant. That would be the difference.
Okay, I understand. And in the meantime, do you also want administration to bring forward what the cost of it might be to do a consultant?
I think between us making that decision at the committee of the whole meeting, I don't think I need a price tag on it for next week, no.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments from councillors who may be less confused than me. Councillor Wegener?
All right, I'm a little confused. So I mean, I've looked at the report, I've looked at the comparison. We're talking about discussing it on July 12th, which is fine, with the possibility of bringing in an external consultant to, I guess, evaluate the prices and the user fees that we have. I guess if that's going to be part of the discussion on July the 12th, personally myself, I'd like to see a price tag attached to that.
So on July 12th, we wouldn't be able to make a council motion to hire the consultant anyway. But yeah, I guess if administration wants to even be able to ballpark for us, that'd be helpful.
Mr. Scoble?
Well, if this goes ahead at the committee of the whole, I would see this as a bit of I guess, a discussion of scope, like what exactly would council want to see in a report? Because, you know, we can hire a consultant for $10,000 or we can hire a consultant for $50,000, you know, depending on what the outputs of that report council would like to see. So I think the discussion next week would be kind of fleshing that out a little bit, just understanding what are council's expectations in a report.
So let me just give you an example. So if I look at page 49 and I see, you know, a drop-in rate at the rink for an adult is $5. And I look at Leduc is $9.50, Okotoks $8.75, Airdrie $16. Those numbers just stop making sense to me. At some point, I would sure like to have a consultant say, well, look, you guys are $5, but look at the service they get. Or Airdrie $16, you know, that's ridiculously high. Or I would like somebody who knows this area better than me to be able to tell me if our fees are fair, if they're too low. Maybe they're not fair to the taxpayers. Maybe they're being overly subsidized. So I just would like a professional to come in and be able to walk me through some of these numbers, because I just simply don't know. Like Mark said in his presentation, I can't compare apples to oranges, but a consultant could do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mitzner and then Councillor Peterson.
So I appreciate the presentation and the time already invested by the Town of Strathmore administration. And I think it's quite simple. You could take all 5 of these and do an average. I don't think we need a consultant to be telling us what we're going to charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Worship. So one of the things that I just would address to Mark, I think in between 2018 and 2019, that extensive recreational report was put out, and there's a very good likelihood that our new councillors haven't had access to that.
Through the chair, yes, the recreation master plan that was adopted by council, I think in early 2020, if I recall correctly, it is online, it is available to council, and we can definitely ensure that it's forwarded. I don't believe that fees and things like that were addressed in that. So
no, it's not. But the reason that I bring it up is that recreational master plan, and I know that you were a part of that. It is at least in my opinion, a real good overview of what exists here, what could exist, how we can measure processes going forward in terms of efficacy and that balance that Councillor Wiley is really working towards achieving. And so having that at hand, it would seem to me that if at some point council came to this understanding that using that recreation master plan and then looking at a 5-year increase in terms of trying to establish a better balance would be something that would be very doable. And I know that time constraints, COVID, all kinds of other changes impacted the life that you lead in terms of that recreational master plan, but I think it's still really relevant. I don't know if you would say that. I mean, I'd be interested in hearing your opinions on that.
yeah, yes, through the chair, I believe there's a lot of good data that is still there. You know that, for example, there's a lot of comparisons between municipalities, similar sizes and things like that in terms of fitness centers or tennis courts or pickleball courts, that is still relevant data. But as you said, it is a somewhat historical document in some, in speaking with some colleagues from Airdrie, they're looking for, to example, to add an artificial turf outside. Right. That report obviously is dated now, and so, but majority of that comparison information may still be relevant and at least provide some information, but it won't go into the detail that, Genesis Place has these following amenities, and that's what they charge for it.
So my follow-up question, with the knowledge you carry today, the information that as Councilor Misser pointed out, that's before us now, and the recreation master plan that exists, would existing staff have capacity leading up to our next budget to putting together a proposal? And maybe this is you tell me if this is an unfair question, you can, I'll take an SLT head slap for it. But, if it's a legitimate thing that could be done by the people who live, work, and live and breathe this environment, if that's something that we might consider going forward.
Mr. Scoble?
Yeah, through the chair, certainly. I mean, if council chooses to have a discussion again, I think we need to just look at some parameters. There's demographics, there's different regional economies. Perhaps council wants to take more of a top-down approach. Do you want to set the fees based on a specified cost recovery or a percentile relative in the region? There's all kinds of things that can be considered, but certainly, our staff here are very experienced in recreation for decades. I'd probably pushing 50 or 60 years if you take our leaders in recreation in the community here, combined experience.
So just to conclude, Your Worship, this is my belief is that when it comes to this discussion, this might form a part of it. I'm not opposed to Councillor Wiley's motion at all. But I think that this might, but the consultancy portion of that might come through our own people, through that recreation master plan, and still achieve what Councillor Wiley is requesting. Because I do believe that the expertise exists here, but it's still worth the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much. I think what I'm hearing kind of in general is that there does seem to be some appetite to discuss this since we're discussing it now. I don't think it ever hurts to discuss reports more. I'm actually happy that Councillor Wiley amended his motion to this because I was hoping that we'd have a chance to discuss more before we made a decision. I think referring it to Committee of the Whole to discuss further, maybe identify a scope or maybe identify that there is no scope required is understandable and a reasonable request. And I would support this going to Committee of the Whole for a discussion next week to determine if there are next steps to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Mark, do these communities that you have in your comparisons, do they provide information as to what cost recovery formula each of them follow?
Your Worship, no. That typically when we try to establish our fees, is the facility managers contact their network of other managers and try to determine what their other rates and fees may be. And then we try to use ours in comparison so that there's no real outliers. And so, like I said, our arena manager is very, they have a local arena managers meeting annually where they meet together and say, this is what our fees are going to be. They don't discuss whether with their cost recovery and things like that. And so you're going to have some outliers that maybe the City of Calgary is less expensive than a private provider such as like Can-Ans and things like that. But ultimately, that's the research that goes part of our fee, part of the annual budget, part of the setting the fees is they try to do their cost comparison between different providers as best they can and establish it that way.
Okay, thank you very much. So is there further discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you for your report, Mark, and your ability to answer those questions.
Thank you, Your Worship.
We move now to 8.4, Alberta Municipalities Resolution, Provincial Indigenous Awareness Training and Support. And I believe this was an attempt to massage the resolution for the Alberta Municipalities Conference in September. Jonathan, you're speaking to this?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Before council is an amended motion for Alberta Municipalities Convention in the fall. Previously, over the last month, the town did submit a resolution for that convention. After discussing with Alberta municipalities, the council decided to maybe possibly make an amendment to that motion, which is why it's here before you tonight. Administration has checked out the wording of that motion with Alberta municipalities. They're happy with it. We have sent a draft of the motion to the village of Rockyford for possibly reseconding the motion. So if council has any questions regarding the motion before you, happy to answer.
Thank you, Jonathan. Has Alberta Municipalities commented on this?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. They have commented on it and they're happy with the amendments.
And I imagine they have more confidence than they did prior. Thanks. Hint, hint. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Have we engaged Siksika to review this amended resolution, and whether they feel like it still carries the same weight and spirit of the original resolution that was put forward? Do we have their support, is I guess what I'm asking.
I thank you, Worship Council. So we have engaged Siksika previously regarding the motion. They haven't seen this draft just because I know they've been very busy with the powwow I believe they had this past weekend. So that's something that we will make sure that they're okay with these amendments.
Okay, yeah, that's very important to me, that it's not just us and Rockyford that are approving this, but also that it aligns with what Siksika and the Indigenous community sees as what is needed throughout our province. That's what we're trying to accomplish with this, and I want to make sure that their voice is at the table. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Question for Jonathan, Councillor Wiley?
Not so much a question, just I guess more once it gets put to motion, I can make a comment.
Okay, thank you. So is anyone prepared to put a motion on the floor? Thank you.
Your Worship, I would move that Council approve the amendments to the Alberta Municipalities Resolution entitled Provincial Indigenous Awareness Training and Support as presented in Attachment 1, and that Council direct administration to submit the resolution entitled Provincial Indigenous Awareness Training and Support as presented in Attachment 1 for consideration at the 2023 Alberta Municipalities Convention in the fall.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. And now we have a motion on the floor. Discussion. Councillor Wiley, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to make it clear, I support the resolution, therefore let it be resolved. I think that the provincial government providing funding to have opportunities for elders to provide education is really important. I recognize that some of the horrors that occurred in residential schools are only surpassed by the fact that the idea that a government would come into a home and forcefully remove children, it's abhorrent to me. Nevertheless, I can't support this resolution as some of the preamble at the beginning and the background information is so general as to be historically inaccurate, and I just can't attach my name to it. So there's a couple of problems, but I know for the sake of time that it needs to get moved forward, so I won't be able to support the resolution.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Peterson?
So Your Worship, I was just wondering. So I don't know what is incorrect in the preamble. I didn't see anything that was incorrect or erroneous. I did wonder. One of the things I was going to ask is it worthwhile in this preamble to outline the calls to action in the TRC? I know you reference them in the body, but I'm wondering, so 40, 43, 47, 57, 64, 75, 77, 87, and 88 are the calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation a document that is related specifically to municipalities. And it certainly is evidenced in the preamble here in terms of your UNDRIP comments, the United Nations and the residential schools in existence for over 100 years. And so I'm just wondering, you know, if we should somehow, whether we name the numbers or not, or whether we add those as an addendum, maybe that's just the easiest way to do it, assuming that some people at the municipality convention read all of it, because they didn't last time. And yeah, don't poke the bear. And so it would be just really, I think, useful to note that municipalities have an expectation from the Indigenous peoples of Canada to at least address those calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
So Jonathan, have you received enough guidance? Can we pass this resolution and still make an addition?
Or add an addendum, maybe. I think you're allowed to add an addendum.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I would recommend if council wants to make that amendment, you can do it in the motion. Just make the motion as presented and as amended to include the.
Well, how do you feel about that? Like you have a lot more experience in writing resolutions and yeah, Alberta Muni than I do, and so you know I don't. When I bring this forward, I don't have a formulated direction. I really don't, because I don't know what's best, whether it's just simply to mention the 8 calls to action of the TRC and with a reference like you always do at the end, like a bibliography, or to, yeah, anybody else.
Did you want to weigh in?
I'm wondering if council wants to make a specific impact on that and make sure that it's heard at the convention. Maybe there's a way for us to incorporate that into the speaking notes, to, you know, if that's really something that you want to hit home. I mean, you know, you kind of alluded, they don't necessarily read this start to finish anyways, and so if there's certain points that you'd really like, you know, to be articulated there, we could certainly take that away too and make sure that that's crafted into the.
That's a really good idea. And the other thing that's happened is that there were asks from other municipalities that, you know, who specifically asked if the resolution ever returned to the floor, if they could how they could help, how they could speak in favor, ask questions to the motion. So I think it would be really helpful. And I mean, last year we had people coming to our table saying, you know, are there questions that we could ask? Are there more things that we could bring forward? And we just really didn't have it at hand. And plus we were probably pretty arrogant when we went in.
Pretty angry.
Well, arrogant at least. And thinking, so yeah, regardless of the outcome, I know that the group that I met with today, who had seen the first motion, and I was surprised. I was meeting with a group around education and First Nations curriculum changes, addressing this, and they knew about the original resolution, and were extremely encouraged by it. And these were Indigenous groups, so yeah.
So circling back to what Kara said, we could add something to our speaking notes as. Yeah, okay. So we have a motion on the floor regarding Alberta Munis in this resolution. Any further discussion? Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say a couple words on this. I'm supportive of the resolution, but I just want to express that I am slightly disappointed in the amendments that have been made, in that from my perspective, I see them as lessening the impact should the resolution be passed. You know, municipalities who want to develop opportunities for residents to learn, you know, from my perspective, I just see that as a lessening of what we're asking for. And I know that there are many reasons for that. And I know that we received some feedback from Alberta municipalities on this resolution and some suggestions from them on amendments to be made out of concern for the success of the resolution, which I'm sure came from last year, and it's not so much success, but I think this year is always a different year. So I am supportive of any initiative that improves the opportunities for Indigenous cultural awareness and for us to meet our mandate under the Truth and Reconciliation report and our calls to action. Yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that it's been toned down and kind of pulled back, but I will support it in either end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Jonathan and Kara. We have no bylaws to go through tonight, and that brings us to item 10, councillor information and inquiries, questions between councillors and or council statements. Seeing none. 10.3, question and answer period. 10.4, legislative services. Do we have any administrative inquiries tonight? No. And we have no notices of motion. So that brings us to a motion to go in camera. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd move that council move in camera to discuss items related to Section 24, subsection 1A of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act at 7:18 p.m.
Thank you for the motion. All in favor? And we are now going in camera. Thank you. And